here we have the shattered image assignment. This comes from taking a magazine picture, whether it's black and white or color, and cutting it into many smaller pieces, all with straight cuts and sharp points, kind of like broken glass. Reassembling the image and then selectively removing portions of it to be redrawn in pencil. This can be done in black and white, or as seen in this one that's incomplete, in color. So this area right here on this woman's shoe has been recreated using colored pencil. So has this door. So it can be done in color as well. What we're going to do first is a black and white version though. So in order to do this, what you really need to do is find a suitable image in a magazine. I've got some magazines here, and I already took the liberty of searching through them to find appropriate images. What you're looking for are images that are a full page. So here I've got this lemur in a tree. I've got this woman and her child. Here I've got a bird. So the common thing between all of these is they're pretty much a full page, right? And you want to try to get a full page with no words if that's possible. A little word here or there isn't going to make a big difference because you can select that as one of the parts that gets removed and that you redraw so that you can omit the words. In this case right here, this bird, the background is completely clear except for this little caption, and that could easily be a piece that comes in from the side and gets removed, maybe for the eye or part of the beak, and gets redrawn so that that caption can be omitted. But you want to find something that's a full page. Now, you might run into an issue where you find an image that you really want to use, say for instance this car, and you'll notice that, well, first things first, it's not a full page, it's actually across pages, and it's got some words here. Well, the words are easy to take care of. You just trim along the edge of the photograph. But the second problem is that this image is on this page and this page. I'll show you how to deal with that in a minute. So let's look back at these images first. The best and safest way to remove a picture from a magazine is with a cutting device. I feel comfortable using an X-Acto knife, but if you feel the need to, you can use a pair of scissors. You just won't be able to get as deep of a cut with the scissors or as far into the spine with the scissors. That's just how it is. Now, in order to cut with the X-Acto knife, depending on where your image is in the magazine, whether it's closer to the front or the back, you may want to cut on the front or the back of the picture. This picture is closer to the front of the magazine, so what I'm going to do is flip it over, and I'm going to spread this out as far as I can, and I'm going to cut through the back side of this paper. You can use this as your guide. It might take more than one pass, but it looks like I got it on the first shot. After you do that, you can trim any excess edges or borders off, and you can clean this cut up. If you didn't do a nice clean cut the first time, you can clean that up with scissors or with an X-Acto knife. It doesn't really matter. So here's that picture of a car again. And I want to be able to get this side out and this side without losing anything in between, so that I can reconstruct this image with fidelity. Now, I'm lucky because this is at the very beginning of this magazine, so what I can do for this first page is just pull it away like that, and I did get a staple hole here and here. It's less of a problem down here, but a bit more of a problem right there. That's okay, because that can be one of the pieces that gets trimmed out that you then redraw. So not that big of an issue. And here again, I can just pull it These National Geographics are quite sturdy. And see, this one didn't damage anything at all, and I have an extra border here that will need to be trimmed off to reconstruct this image. So if I put this aside, you can see that I have a little bit of extra space here and here to trim away, and then this can be lined up appropriately to reconstruct it. And then the pieces that aren't looking so great, I can actually choose those as pieces that go away. But you'll notice that the pictures kind of overlap. This part of the car here is also reproduced on this page as well. So I can actually choose the side here that works well, and I might not even have to worry about that little notch that the staple took out. So that's something to consider when choosing an image that spans 2 pages. So I've got this image that I've selected, and I want to go ahead and trim it up. So I'm going to use a ruler as a straight edge. I'm going to place that right up against the edge of the image, and keeping my fingers out of the way, I'm just going to use the blade to slice that excess off, and that gives me a nice clean edge. I just have to continue doing that to the other sides of the photograph and clean those up as well. Very simple. And there we go. So this is nice and clean. It's got straight edges on all 4 sides. The composition is good, so I don't need to crop anything out. If I did need to crop anything out, again, I would use my straight edge. I would say if I wanted to get rid of the sky, I would bring it down, make sure that it lines up straight, and I could just slice that off. But this was taken by a professional photographer. They knew what they were doing with composition, so they got this picture set up just right, and it's a beautiful photograph that can then be cut up and turned into a shattered image. At this point, it's important to measure the image. Let's take a look at how to trim this properly. I'm going to start by taking off the excess white edge right here. So I'm using my straight edge and my blade, and I'm just cleaning up this material. So I have a nice smooth edge right here to work with. And now I can kind of see what I'm working with right here, and I can line things up. So right here, you can see that the pictures overlap somewhat, and I can get it lined up to where this little area here is not affected. So I'm actually going to trim some of that off as well, right up against my damaged area here and here, and remove that material. And see how it's looking now. Aha, so the picture fits together perfectly right along that cut line because the removed material was the same amount that this actually overlaps into the page. They do that so that when you open the magazine, you can still see all of the image, even though a portion of it's being pinched together by those staples. So that's perfect. The rest of what I need to do is just to get rid of this outside area right here and all the printing of the words. So I'll go ahead and do a quick time lapse for that. So here's my reconstructed image, and it is in 2 parts. So I already have a cut line right here. And what I want to do is I want to cut it apart even more completely. I want something interesting in each one of the pieces though. So the way that I cut it, I'm gonna be changing directions and angles and stuff, and all the cuts that I do are gonna be straight cuts. I already have a perfectly straight cut right here. I'm gonna play off of that and cut other straight cuts coming at different angles. So I'm gonna start with this smaller piece, and I'm just going to do an angle right here. Okay, so you can see I'm using the straight edge to help me get nice, perfectly straight lines. And I want something interesting in each piece. So what I don't want to have happen is a situation where I've got the car in one piece and then this background right here, which is not terribly interesting. So I'm going to continue cutting in such a way that gives me a chance to have parts of the car in every piece. So here's that. I may cut this, yeah, I probably will cut this again right here at the top of the wheel arch. Depending on the size of your initial image, you will have more or less pieces at the end of it. So this part, which is about a third of the total image, I cut it into about 5 pieces. So I'll probably end up cutting this side into about 10 for about 15 total. Let's set that off to the side, and I'll continue cutting this up as well. It does not take a long time to cut, but you do want to make sure that you cut cleanly and completely on your first pass. You don't want to have to go back over this material because the paper is fairly thin, and if you are going back over it more than one time, you may fray the edge, which is definitely something you want to avoid because that will affect your end product. Now, if you're not comfortable using the X-Acto knife and a straight edge, then you're more than welcome to use scissors. The proper technique for using scissors is not to hack. So you don't want to do a bunch of this. You want to get into the image, and you want to go all the way down into the very bottom of the V here, yeah? As deeply as you can. And you want to make long cuts. You don't want to snip them closed while they're in because that can tear the end. So again, all the way in, make a long cut. Don't close the scissors completely before opening them back up, and just slide them as far forward as they need to be, and then finish the cut. The reason you want to do it that way is because if you close them, the tip, when it comes together, sometimes will create a little tear in the paper, and you want to avoid that. We're going for clean, smooth cuts so that you can't see where this image was cut, except for where the image ends and the drawing begins. And the cleaner that is, the better your final result. So I'm just gonna make a few more cuts here. And let's see, let's get a nice long sliver right here. My objective was to get something interesting in each of the pieces. So once you've got it all cut up, then you need to reassemble it. So basically it's just like putting a puzzle back together. And all the pieces come back in line, and you can see your image. So this piece is quite large, but that's okay. I could probably cut that in half. I might cut that in half. But let's do a count and see how many pieces I've got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 is great for an image this size. That leaves me with a lot of pieces to work with to get my composition balanced. Because what you want to do, getting my examples out here, is you want to balance what's going on with the pieces. So in the case of this car right here, each of these straight areas, there's a piece here, a piece here, a piece here, a piece here. So that's 4 pieces. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pieces that have been left in and glued down. And about the same amount, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, this might have been 9. So you want to have roughly the same amount that you've taken out as you've glued down. For instance, this piece right here is more than 50% drawing. There's only 4 pieces left in, and I think there's like 6 or 7 pieces that were taken out and then redrawn. So you want the balance to be 50-50 or slightly better in favor of drawing. You don't want to glue down more than you draw. You want to draw more than you glue down, or at least equal. So the way that's done is once the image is back together, you're going to select pieces to remove. The pieces that you remove are the ones that you will eventually draw. So I think as an anchor, I would probably glue this down. So I would probably end up drawing the headlight. I may take this as well and this out, and we'll take that one out. And this, I want to kind of break it up. We'll leave this one in, we'll take that one out. It's not a bad idea to take one or the other of the pieces that were on the edge of the split. Probably leave that one in, take this one and this one. It's also not a bad idea to glue in parts that are on the corner. It helps you get things set up right. So if we count how many pieces I took out, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 up here. This is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 are out, and then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in. And you can see roughly about 50% to maybe 60% of the picture is missing now. And this is a good configuration. If I wanted to substitute one back in, like maybe I want to put that one back in and take that one out, maybe that's a better composition. So you'll try things. Maybe I want to take this one out and put this one back in. You can try different things. So does that look better? Does it look worse? I don't know, but I think my initial instinct on that was correct, and I think that looks better. Yeah, so this is what I'm gonna go with. So the next step is getting it glued down, just the parts that we need to get glued down on there. So I've got a piece of drawing paper right here, which is what you will need to do the next part of this. Before I cut the image up, and this is important, before you cut the image apart, you want to measure it. So if I was using this image to do this, which I'm not, but if I was, I would measure it first before I cut it up. This is still one piece. And I'm getting just under 6.5 inches. We'd round it up to 6.5. And for the height, I'm getting just under 9.5. So again, I would round it up to 9.5. So let's say this is 6.5 by 9.5. That's fine. And what I would do is I would add to those measurements 1 inch, because I want a white border around my picture when it's done. So if 6.5 is how wide it is, I would add 1 inch to that, so I'd have 7.5 as my width. And if 9.5 was my height, I would add 1 inch to that, which would give me 10.5. So this, for the paper, for this, I would cut it out at 7.5 by 10.5, which would give me a nice white border of about 1/2 inch all the way around. So I'm gonna go ahead and measure that really quick and get that cut. So we said 7.5 by 9.5. So putting my ruler right here, there's the 7.5. I'll put a mark there. I'll slide this down and do the same thing further down. Anytime you're doing measurements, you know you need to have 2 reference marks for every straight line that you draw. So I've got a mark here and here. I can put them on the edge of the ruler and connect them like so. Okay, and then I'll turn the paper and measure 10.5. So lining this up, find the 10.5 right here, make a mark, and again at the 10.5 and make a mark. So once I have that mark, then I can safely connect the two marks and have a line. Okay, so this is the layout for the piece of paper that I've got to cut. And again, you can use scissors or you can use a blade. I've got a cutting board here and an X-Acto knife, so I'm gonna do an X-Acto knife. I find it's much easier to use than scissors. It's much faster too, because I don't need to worry about, you know, that complex hand motion. I just basically draw the line that I want to cut and it's cut. It is important to use proper technique and pressure though, so that's something that will come with practice for all of you. Getting things lined up again and making my cut. I always want to keep your fingers out of the way when you're cutting. You don't want to be bringing this across and then have your thumb in the way. That would be a disaster. So there's my piece. So if you can see, now I flipped this over because there might be some little remnants of a mark there. And instead of erasing it, I just flipped the paper over. I've got a clean side right here. So you can see how this would center up in there and give you a nice border all the way around, just like that. So back to my car picture that I've already cut up. I've got the pieces that I'm going to glue down over here on my left in a separate pile from the pieces that I will have removed to use for my reference for drawing. In order to glue this down, okay, you can use glue sticks, you can use white glue, or you can use what I have here, rubber cement. Now rubber cement is quick drying, okay, and it creates a nice strong bond. You want a scratch piece of paper. So I'm going to lay that down right there. I'm going to flip, this is the image that I want facing up. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to basically paint the rubber cement on to my piece very sparingly. You don't need a lot, okay? You want to get it all the way to the edges because you don't want the edges to lift. And the beautiful part about rubber cement is if you get any on the paper, you just wait for it to dry and rub it off, okay? So I've got the backside pretty much covered, and I'm just going to carefully line it up, giving myself a little border, and smooth from the center to the edges. I don't want to smooth from the edges over because I could accidentally lift up my piece, and I don't want that to happen. Rubber cement's also really good, better than regular white glue, because it doesn't contain any water, and water or moisture can make the paper kind of bubble up and warp and wave, similar to when you're doing a watercolor painting and the paper kind of wants to wave and do its own thing. Now, in order to get the next pieces down, like this piece goes way over here, this piece goes up here. In order to get these in place, I need to use the pieces I have over here. Now, I don't want to mix these piles up, so that's why I'm keeping these on one side and those on the other, because I've already made my selection. But to get this piece down, I need to insert a piece from over here. I have to find the right one. Here we go. So this piece is going to end up being drawn, but it needs to go in temporarily, right? And needs to line up just like that, as close to back in the original spot as you can get it with no gaps. Okay, you can see there's no gaps. It's fitting in there just like it should. And in order to get this piece glued in, I have to have this piece in the right area. So I'm going to get that in and get it lined up this is where you want to really take your time and get things just right. Once I've got that done, then I can pick this back up. I can get the glue on the back side of it. So here we go with the rubber cement. Again, I'm using a piece of scratch paper to protect my work surface from the rubber cement because I don't want to get it everywhere and then like maybe dip my arm in it or get it on a piece of paper that I don't want it to be on. It's just a safety measure. Okay, so that's got that covered. Now, once I have that covered, I can set that out of the way. I can hold this piece down and then reinsert this into just the right location, get it lined up. Okay, now with the rubber cement, I've got a little bit of work time before it starts to dry up on me, and I can get it into position. Sometimes tapping it is better than smoothing it down with your fingers, okay? And you should be able to feel that it's lining up right here and it's not underneath or over top. You don't want to overlap these pieces. You want them to fit perfectly. So that's going to be like that. Now this piece is in the exact correct location because I can just put this piece back in and have it line up with both this piece and this piece. So I know that I'll be able to draw this accurately. Now I've got another piece right here that needs to go in, but you can see that's not the right location for that. So I need another piece to come back in right here in between there and there. So let me search for one, I believe, yeah, right here. This piece will line up right there, and that will help me get this piece glued down in the right location. So I'm gonna pick this piece up, get some, well no, this is the one I need to have in. I'm gonna pick this piece up, get some glue on the back of that and glue it in. And then I'll finish up the rest in a time lapse. So again, scratch a piece of paper in, rubber cement on, spread it from the center to the edges. Make sure you don't miss any parts. Okay, get it completely covered. Oh, when you're done brushing, always put your brush back in the cap, and it's not a bad idea to give it one little turn because you don't want this to off gas and start to cure up and dry on you. That would be bad because then we wouldn't be able to use it. So get this lined up where it needs to be. Get this lined up right next to it. Eliminate any spaces. Make sure you can see certain lines lining up correctly in the picture. Once it's happy, go ahead and either tap or spread from the center to the outside, making sure not to move that picture. And then you can remove the piece that you just put in to get that all set up. So keeping this off to the correct side, I've got the ones that I'm drawing and the ones that I'm gluing. So I'm gonna get the rest of these glued down in a little time lapse. Well, here's the whole thing glued down. Now, when I started this, I probably should have given myself a little border and drawn the border in there to keep things lined up, and I didn't, but that's something that you should do. You can see how all over here it's nice and neat, but then it kind of got off the rails over here. It wasn't perfectly lined up with that first piece, but these are lined up correctly with the pieces that are now over here that I will begin redrawing. The process for redrawing is very, very simple. You just take the piece that you want to work on. Say for instance, this part right here, which is part of the front bumper of the car, which I believe goes right here, yeah. So that's got part of the wheel, the front bumper, the grille, and a little bit of the background here and there. You can see that goes in there nicely, it fits in. So the trick is to go ahead and get it lined up, make sure things are where they're supposed to be, and begin to draw it. So having your pencil ready to go and positioning it in there. Now what I want to do is I want to look at some of the shapes that are in here, and I want to kind of find reference points for the corners of things. Here, 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 and here, and where this line is, where it begins, where it ends. So I know where it begins, right here, because I can see that, but I don't know where it ends. So I'm gonna get this piece lined in, and I always have it in my hand so I can pop it in, pop it out, pop it in, pop it out, as many times as is necessary to get this lined up. So that's gonna go right here. And I know I can draw a straight line from here to here and it will work. So I'm gonna do that very, very lightly. I don't want to draw anything really dark right now because then it'll be difficult to erase. So everything's gonna be really light. Okay, so I know I'm gonna have a line right here that's straight across. And I'm just working on the contour. I'm not worried about shading anything in yet. That will come later. This is the bottom of the tire right here. So what I can do is I can hover over this location with my pencil, move the piece out, and just kind of lightly draw that line where it was over top of the picture. Right here, I can see a little line there, so I'm gonna take the piece back out. So you can see, just by popping it in and out, I can see where there's a line right here for the back of the tire. I can go ahead and draw that curve. So what I do is I hover in place above what I want to draw, like a line right here, and then I can put it down on the paper when I move the piece away. Because I'm leaving this hand in position where I want to draw, but I'm taking the picture out so I can actually draw on the paper. So this is a really easy way to get your picture blocked in by moving things in and out. That's why it's important to keep your hand on the piece that you're drawing so you can maneuver it quickly. There we go. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a little time lapse of this process using the different pieces that I've got. So here is the picture with all of the contour work. This is just line. The pencil is very, very light. You want to do your pencil very, very lightly in case you need to move or change a line. Also, when you shade this, you don't want dark lines everywhere. That would give it kind of like a cell shaded look. You want some of these lines to disappear into the shading and become part of the value structure of the piece. So lines like in this back area here where I drew a line just to show the indication of some highlight or shadow on the panel and maybe a reflection in the paint. So there's some of those on the hood, in the rear quarter panel, and here and there. So this is going to be the end of stage 1. Stage 2 is going to be shading, and I will show you how to do that in a second video.